September 9, 2025, a date that will be remembered as a turning point in global politics. The world wakes up to a new reality, with headlines flashing across every screen and whispers of uncertainty echoing in every capital. The world is on edge, gripped by a sense of unease not felt in decades. From bustling city squares to quiet living rooms, people everywhere are glued to their screens, anxiously awaiting the next development. Washington and Moscow, two superpowers, now find themselves locked in a storm of tension. The air is thick with suspicion, and every move is scrutinized by allies and adversaries alike. President Trump is reportedly stunned by the harsh sentence handed down to a key Putin ally, a move that has sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles. This unexpected verdict signals deep rifts and growing instability inside the Kremlin, raising questions about Putin's grip on power and the future of his inner circle. Meanwhile, Russian factories are burning, their smokestacks now symbols of a crumbling economy. Relentless Western sanctions have pushed Russia's industries to the brink, leaving entire cities facing unemployment and uncertainty. The ruble tumbles and shelves in some regions grow bare. The stakes for global peace have never been higher. The United Nations is in emergency session, with diplomats racing against time to prevent a wider conflict. Every negotiation, every word could tip the balance between war and peace. Amid the chaos, rumors of a possible Trump-Putin summit begin to swirl. For some, it sparks hope that dialogue might prevail. For others, it brings volatility and fear to global markets as investors brace for the unknown. President Biden's final round of sanctions has left Russia reeling, its economy staggering under the weight of international pressure. Now the world watches as Trump faces a critical decision. Will he maintain this pressure, risking further escalation, or seek a new path that could reshape the global order? Ukraine's President Zelensky is pushing harder than ever for direct peace talks, urging the world not to lose sight of the human cost. Europe, led by Germany's new chancellor, stands firm, threatening even tougher measures if Russia refuses to come to the table. The message is clear. The world will not stand by as aggression continues. The world is watching Trump's every move. His decisions in the coming days will not only shape the Western alliance, but could determine the fate of millions and the future of the conflict itself. Europe's unified stance is isolating the Kremlin more than ever before. Putin now faces a stark choice: negotiate and seek a way out, or risk plunging his country into even deeper isolation and hardship. The coming weeks will reveal whether the combined force of sanctions, diplomacy, and international resolve can finally bring an end to the war, or if the world will be forced to brace for even darker days ahead. The Kremlin's next move could change the course of history. As midnight approaches in Moscow, the world holds its breath, waiting to see what the future will bring. News of a potential Trump-Putin summit in Alaska sends Russian stocks soaring, an 8.3% surge, the biggest since the war began. Investors are betting on a diplomatic breakthrough that could ease crippling sanctions and revive Russia's battered economy. Energy giants like Gazprom and Novatek lead the rally, but analysts warn the optimism is fragile. If the summit fails or faces strong opposition from Ukraine and Europe, markets could crash just as quickly. The rally is built on hope, not policy. Even with successful talks, Russia's economic recovery will be slow and uncertain. Every political rumor now shakes the market. Russia's fate is tied to decisions made in Washington and other capitals. The stakes for Russia's economy and the world have never been higher. In the final days of his presidency, President Biden took decisive action, unleashing a sweeping new wave of sanctions against Russia. These measures were not just routine diplomatic gestures, they represented some of the most severe economic penalties ever imposed on a major world power in recent history. The primary target of these sanctions was Russia's oil and gas sector, the very lifeblood of its economy and the main source of funding for its military operations. By focusing on these critical energy exports, the Biden administration aimed to strike at the heart of Russia's financial engine, hoping to drastically reduce the resources available for its ongoing war efforts. Over 180 ships believed to be part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet, vessels used to secretly transport oil and evade international scrutiny, were blacklisted. This unprecedented move sent shockwaves through global shipping markets, as it effectively cut off a major avenue for Russia to sell its oil on the world stage. The goal was clear: to choke off billions of dollars in revenue each month that would otherwise flow directly into the Kremlin's war chest. By targeting these financial arteries, the sanctions sought to undermine Russia's ability to sustain its military campaign and to send a powerful message to other would-be aggressors. This bold move was carefully coordinated with the United Kingdom, America's closest ally, to maximize its impact and avoid triggering a global oil shock. The timing was strategic. Coming just before the transition of power in Washington, it was designed to lock in a tough policy stance that would be difficult for the next administration to quickly reverse. Biden's team made sure to brief the incoming Trump transition team in detail. outlining the rationale and potential consequences of the sanctions. However, the ultimate decision to maintain or roll back these measures now rests squarely with the new president, placing a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. The sanctions are designed not only to cripple Russia's war machine, but also to send a clear and unmistakable message to the world. Borders cannot be redrawn by force, and acts of aggression will be met with unified international resistance. While Russian officials have publicly dismissed the sanctions as a political trap set by the West, the economic pain inside Russia is both real and growing. The ruble has tumbled, inflation is soaring, and ordinary citizens are feeling the squeeze as prices rise and goods become scarce. For President Trump, undoing these measures would require a very public and deliberate act, one that would immediately become his first major foreign policy test. The stakes could not be higher, as any decision will be closely scrutinized both at home and abroad. The new sanctions also include strict measures to prevent Russia from finding loopholes or evading restrictions, tightening the noose around its economy and making it increasingly difficult for Moscow to fund its war. Around the world, governments and citizens alike are watching to see whether President Trump will hold the line on these tough sanctions, or choose to open the door to Moscow, potentially reshaping the global balance of power. The outcome of this decision will not only shape the future of the conflict in Ukraine, but could also set a precedent for how the international community responds to acts of aggression in the years to come. As the pressure on Russia's economy mounts day by day, the world waits to see whether these crippling sanctions will force a change in Moscow's behavior, or whether a new chapter in global geopolitics is about to begin. With Trump taking office, America's Russia policy stands at a pivotal crossroads. The world is watching closely as the new administration steps into the White House, wondering if the next chapter in U.S.-Russia relations will bring confrontation, compromise, or something entirely unexpected. President Biden's sweeping sanctions, designed to punish Moscow for its actions in Ukraine and beyond, could be reversed with the stroke of a pen. Trump's previous term was marked by a notably softer approach toward Moscow, raising questions about whether he will once again seek to reset relations with the Kremlin or chart a new course. America's allies and adversaries alike are watching for Trump's first moves. Will he maintain the pressure that has defined recent U.S. policy, or will he pursue rapprochement with President Putin, potentially altering the balance of power in Europe and beyond? The fate of the sanctions, especially those targeting Russia's shadow oil fleet, a key source of funding for the Kremlin's war machine, now hangs in the balance. Trump's willingness to enforce or relax these measures will send a clear message to both Moscow and the world. If the new administration takes a lax approach, the sanctions could become little more than symbolic gestures, allowing Russia to continue funding its military operations and undermining years of Western efforts to contain the conflict. European leaders are deeply concerned that a sudden shift in U.S. policy could fracture the united front that has been painstakingly built against Russian aggression. The unity of the Western alliance is at stake, and any sign of wavering could embolden Moscow. Trump's decision in the coming days will send a powerful signal about his foreign policy priorities, not just to Russia, but to the entire world. Will he stand firm with America's allies, or will he seek a new deal with Putin? For the people of Ukraine, the stakes could not be higher. As they watch and wait, the future of their country may hinge on decisions made in Washington, D.C. The world holds its breath, awaiting an answer that could decide Ukraine's fate. The stakes for the Western alliance and for global security have never been higher. The next steps taken by the United States will shape the course of history. In a bold move, Ukraine's President Zelensky travels to Turkey, urging direct peace talks with Putin. He declares that only Putin can end the war, making the Russian leader's attendance a public test of his commitment to peace. If Putin refuses, Zelensky vows to push for even harsher sanctions from the US and EU. Ukraine is rallying global support, reaching out to Brazil and others to pressure Moscow. A proposed 30-day ceasefire aims to create space for real negotiations. Zelensky's gamble is to break the diplomatic stalemate and force Putin's hand. The world watches to see if Putin will accept the challenge or expose his unwillingness to end the war. The stakes for peace have never been clearer. Europe's patience with Putin is running out. Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz warns that failed peace talks in Turkey will trigger even tougher EU sanctions. Germany's leadership signals Europe's resolve to pressure Moscow into real negotiations. The EU is scrutinizing allies like Serbia, demanding alignment against Russian aggression. Europe's multi-pronged approach, sanctions and diplomatic pressure, isolates Russia further. The message to Putin: negotiate or face deeper economic and political isolation. Europe is united and ready to act. European leaders are united, sending a clear message: Russian aggression will not go unchallenged. The EU demands alignment from all partners, scrutinizing even its own members for ties to Moscow. Serbia's president faces criticism for attending a Russian military parade, highlighting the EU's tough stance. European governments are also cracking down on domestic threats, making themselves more resilient to Russian interference. This unity is a powerful counterbalance as the world waits for Trump's next move. Europe's resolve ensures pressure on Russia continues regardless of US policy shifts. Moscow faces a fundamentally changed relationship with the continent. The Western alliance stands firm in the face of uncertainty. On the ground in Ukraine, the war's brutality continues. Recent bombings in Kharkiv claim more civilian lives. For millions, the conflict is a daily struggle for survival, not a distant political issue. Each attack deepens wounds and hardens resolve, making peace both more urgent and more elusive. Zelensky's diplomatic outreach, including a symbolic visit to the new pope, seeks global support for peace. The push for a 30-day ceasefire is a desperate humanitarian necessity. The world cannot become numb to the violence. Every attack is part of a deliberate strategy to break Ukraine's will. International pressure and unity are critical to stopping the bloodshed. The time for decisive action is now. Russia's economy is cracking under pressure. Burning factories symbolize a system in crisis. Sanctions, isolation, and war costs are converging, threatening social unrest and weakening Putin's grip. Even if sanctions ease, recovery will be long and painful, especially for the vital energy sector. Western technology and investment have vanished, leaving entire industries decimated. The economic war is having real destructive effects inside Russia. International pressure is forcing Putin to choose, escalate, and risk collapse, or negotiate for peace. The world is watching to see if this pressure will force change in Moscow. The outcome could define global stability for years to come.